report from the New York Times raises question about the Trump administration's plans to protect the 2020 election from Russian meddling. According to the article, in the months before her resignation earlier this month, former Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen was trying to prepare for Russian interference in the upcoming election. It goes on to say the White House Chief of Staff, Mick Mulvaney, told her not to bring it up with the president. This new reporting comes just days after Special Counsel Robert Mueller's report revealed the extent of Russia's hacking efforts in the 2016 election. For more on this, let's bring in Eric Geller. He's a cybersecurity reporter for Politico and joins me now from Washington. Eric, this reporting from the New York Times seems to suggest that the administration does not want to discuss this topic publicly. Do you get a similar sense of that from the people you've spoken with?
Absolutely. I've spoken to people at various agencies who are working very hard on this, but every time I talk to them, they say, we just can't get buy-in from the White House. We have to sort of work on our own. And in fact, that's a problem when these agencies have different pieces of this mission. Someone needs to be there at the White House coordinating all of it, and it's been a real challenge getting that done over the past few years.
Eric, if the White House refuses to discuss election interference threats, what might the fallout be? How can our government assure Americans there will be a fair election in 2020?
Well, there are a lot of people at the federal and state level, I should say, who care a lot about this and are working very hard. I speak to them on a regular basis. But as I said, the problem really is ensuring that everybody trusts that there is somebody at the White House calling the shots, managing traffic, making sure people aren't stepping on each other's toes. If you want to know what the fallout would be, I think it's possible that there could be some mixed signal somewhere along the way where one agency knows about something and another agency doesn't, and there's nobody saying you all have to make sure you're sharing this information. That's one possible example of some of the fallout here.
How has the election interference landscape changed since the 2016 election, and where do you see it heading ahead of 2020?
Well, the big thing is that more countries are going to be getting involved. It seems like every few months we see Facebook or Twitter announce a takedown of Iranian accounts or Russian accounts. Other countries have seen that this is something that they can do as well. These are not sophisticated techniques, neither in the case of hacking or in the case of propaganda on social media. These are techniques that have been available for years. I think what we're going to see now is more countries trying to get in on the game, and the number of victims, I think, or targets is going to expand as well.
As more countries become a threat, is our government equipped to handle and dismantle cyber threats, or are we at a disadvantage?
Well, we're one of the most networked countries in the world, so we are at a disadvantage in the sense of cyber deterrence, which means if we want to do something, Russia can always say, we will do something back to you, and we have a lot more to lose in that regard than many other countries. But certainly there are others like Russia, like China, that are heavily dependent on the internet too. And so what you're going to see over the next few years is it's not so much about lacking the capability to carry out certain attacks. It's about lacking the capability to assure yourselves that you can defend if, say, the power grid is targeted. That's really where this landscape is going, is building up resilience, because if we're afraid that our power grid could go down if Russia responds to something that we do, obviously we're going to be a lot more hesitant to do that thing in the first place.
Seems like more and more uncharted territory. Eric, in last week's release of the Mueller report, we learned of specific instances that illustrate the extent of Russia's hacking efforts. In one instance, the report says, quote, "We understand the FBI believes that this operation enabled the GRU to gain access to the network of at least one Florida county government." Eric, how vulnerable are state and local municipalities to interference efforts, and what steps need to be taken to prevent against that?
Well, they're pretty vulnerable in general, just because these are not organizations that have been thinking about cybersecurity. As you can imagine, in many cases, these people are responsible for a lot more things than just elections. But even if it were only elections, that's a lot to deal with without thinking about cybersecurity. They're getting better. They are getting help from the federal government, for example, scanning their systems, finding vulnerabilities. I think what you hear from experts is we just need to do more of that. We need everybody to participate and start looking for those weak points in their systems. And it's also just about basic common sense. Don't click on suspicious links. That's a really important thing to remember. That's how the Russians are getting into a lot of these systems. People click the wrong link, and it's not something sophisticated. It's something very simple like that. And what you need to see from these local election offices is, awareness that they are a target, because a lot of them are not used to that.
Eric Geller, I'm sure we will be speaking with you more as we head into 2020. Thank you so much.
Thank you.